Now, okay,
All right.
fire away.
This is an interview with Rachel Diamondstone on July 31st, 2023, to be included in the Marlboro Morris Ale Archive, which will reside at the Vermont Folklife Center, currently in Middlebury, Vermont. And my name is Pat McPherson.
My name is Susan Creighton.
My name is Rachel Diamondstone.
All right. That's just to get all of our voices so that the automatic transcriber can...
And where is this interview taking place?
The interview is taking place in Brattleboro, Vermont. All right. So we're talking to you, Rachel, partly because of your long history with the ale, but most specifically right now because you have been running the organizing committee now and formerly. So we're going to talk about your experience there quite a bit and, look at your role as an administrator first and then as a participant, possibly. But I'm just going to do a little left-hand turn right away and say, is there anything particular that you would like to add to the story of the ale? You have looked at the questions that we want to cover, but is there anything that came to your mind when you were reading them that you said, they're not really covering this that I really want to talk about, or I have something on my mind that I would like to make sure is in the archive?
The only thing I can think of, and it might be... could be in a couple of these questions about challenges and what's the same now from 10 years ago and stuff like that. But we're learning that things are quite different since the pandemic. And I don't know, maybe I can say what it is and that'll be fine and it can fit in another question. But, we did the 2019 ale and then we had 2 years of no in-person ales, and now we've had 2 years of live ales again. So last year we were just totally crazy and chaotic. This year was a little better, but one thing we definitely learned is that things are different in several ways. It was hard to set up pub stops. We didn't have pub stops in 2022. There weren't enough places open, and people were still feeling very uncertain about being out in public spaces, enclosed public spaces. We did have pub stops this year, but a lot of the places that we had used have gone and, closed during a lot of businesses closed. And in some cases, new businesses have opened, but they don't know us. So we have had to start all over with making relationships. At the end of the 2019 ale, Marlboro College was still a college, and now that's not true, and so we have had to get used to a different landlord, and a few things a couple things anyway are different. Primarily, the issue of alcohol is now a much different animal, alcohol on the campus.
Because of the new owners of the facility, or because of more younger people at the ale?
No, I don't think it's more younger people. I think that goes in waves. And we're just luckily having a nice wave of new people coming, younger people coming in. Last year was the first year we had an agreement with Potash Hill, and I forget exactly the wording of the contract about alcohol, but it was clear that we could not provide the alcohol the way we have been for, in the past, we brought all the alcohol and it was just there and you paid your fee and that was, you could just drink what you wanted as long as you were over 21, and we had wristbands for people. It turns out that it's not so much that Potash Hill is more strict. Well, I mean, I guess it is. That's what it is. Turns out we were doing it illegally before, but nobody knew. And nobody said anything, nobody on the college said anything. I mean, we did it that way. We provided the alcohol at the feast and the beer for the pub, and we did that for decades, and nobody said anything. But apparently, and I don't know if maybe the laws have changed. I don't know. I mean, it's not like we were trying to, fly under the radar or anything, but the Potash Hill people are maybe because they're new at it, it's new, maybe just because of the way their organization is, but they're much clearer about following the laws. So we did one thing last year and we did a different thing this year, and they both were okay, and hopefully next year will be a little better. But essentially we have to pay someone who has a caterer's license to provide the beer. Whether we pay for it or whether we tell people that they have to buy their own beer or whether it's a combination. You can get a server's license, which we actually got Aaron to do last year. Because we thought Aaron Hayden, because he's been our wine person for quite a while, but it turns out that a server's license isn't enough. You have to have a caterer's license, which is a much bigger deal. So it's just like we're just learning these things.
And so is that a new financial burden as well?
It could be, yeah. I mean, that's a whole bigger question about the finances of the ale. I mean, that isn't really covered here, but I suppose I could talk about that at some point if you want. But things have changed there a little bit too. So
yeah, your perspective is
not very dancy, is it?
No, it's great to talk to you because of the reality of putting on a huge event.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we touch on some of those things again.
Okay.
And we'll go back to the happy and joyful beginning, which is that it's Morris dancing, and presumably you love it.
I do love it.
Now, when did you start dancing?
I took a class at Pinewoods in the summer of 1982, which is the summer I turned 21. I had seen Morris dancing before, but I hadn't done it. And it was family week, and it was a beginning Morris class. I was on crew that summer. Sorry, it was beginning Morris for the 13 and up, and I was just turning 21, and I thought, it's going to be me and a bunch of little kids, but whatever. I'd like to do this, and this is the class. And it turned out that Chris Karstanian, who was about 15 then, was also taking it. And so the two of us kind of glommed onto each other because we were the two grown-ups. And we danced across from each other all week. Alistair Brown was the teacher.
Oh, fun.
And for a long time, I thought the first figure was called Fruit Up, like bananas and oranges, because of his accent. I told him that once.
I was going to ask if you'd ever told him
that. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Last time I saw him at Pinewoods, I told him. I joined the Morris team in the fall of 1987.
What team was that?
86, sorry. Oak Apple Morris in Madison. Dan and I went there for graduate school.
And what drew you to it? What did you like about it?
Yeah, I saw that question. It's hard to say. The whole dance stuff started for me pretty much right at once in the beginning of 1981 at a party my mom had. It's kind of a long story. I don't know if you want to hear the whole thing, but it was just part of it. And she, for several years, got together with some women and had a 12th night party. They called it 9 Ladies Dancing. And
9 ladies what?
Dancing.
Oh.
Yeah, from the song. There weren't always 9 of them, but they were all women, and they would all invite a certain number of friends. And one of them was connected to the dance community, but maybe more than one.
And this is in Madison?
Philadelphia.
In where?
Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
Where I grew up. But so one time King Sessing came to the party and danced. So the first time I saw Morris dancing, someone got hit in the head with a stick in the first dance and had to go to the hospital for stitches. And I thought, I want to do that.
It's a good introduction to Morris dancing.
I mean, not maybe with the stick and the blood part, but just just watching them. I don't know, it just felt it was calling to me.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I think I want to write down or establish a bit of the chronology.
Sure.
So you've mentioned Philadelphia and Pine Woods and Madison. So can you just put those things in chronological order a bit?
So I'm from Philadelphia and mostly grew up there. And then I worked at Pine Woods the summer after my freshman year of college. I didn't go to college right away. That's why I was a little older, 21. And then after I finished college, Dan and I got married in Philadelphia. We lived there for a year. And then we moved to Madison to go to graduate school. And then we moved here some years later.
Cool. And Madison was quite a number of years?
7, I think.
7.
We went there the summer of 86, and we moved here in 93, 91, 93, I think. I have to think about it a little bit.
I know it's...
I think it was 1993, because I remember Dan coming to stay with me and Jack in Newton job hunting. And that was in 1993. He was out job hunting in the Boston area.
That makes sense. I got my master's degree in 1990, and then I went back and did my teacher training. And that was like a year and a half, so 1991 would be too early.
Mm.
What team when you got to Madison, were there Morris teams there?
Yeah, there was one, Oak Apple, which I joined, and actually just a general dance community story. When we got there, I went to a contra dance. Dan was not dancing at all then. Completely uninterested in dancing. But there's Scottish, English, and contra dancing in Madison and a Morris team. So I went to a contra dance, and the guy taking money at the door, he said, "Oh, I haven't seen you before. Are you new?" And I said, "Yep, we just moved here." And he asked my name, and he said, "We've been expecting you." Like somehow from the Philadelphia to Madison dance grapevine, they knew we were coming.
Which could be welcoming or very creepy.
Right. No, it was very welcoming.
Good. That's
cool. So you started dancing. You intentionally found Oak Apple?
Yes.
And Dan was still not dancing.
Totally not dancing.
Was Oak Apple invited to Marlboro?
No. Oak Apple goes to the Midwest Ale.
Okay. Did you know about Marlboro?
Nope. Not till I moved here.
No kidding. How interesting. And how's the Midwest Ale compared to Marlboro?
I mean, it's been many years since I went to it.
Yeah.
But in my experience, there are 2 main differences. One is that basically anybody who wants to go can go. Like, they would ask for an invitation, but there aren't as many teams out there. So there hasn't really been an issue with, having too many to do a long show dance or fit in a dining hall or whatever. And it moves around. It's like different teams host it from year to year. So it's not always in the same place.
How radically different in just the whole premise of it in a way.
Well, one thing I learned when I was there in the Midwest, and this is changing now, but I think this is back in the late 80s, right, early 90s, most of the teams were mixed. I think maybe only the Twin Cities had a men's team and a women's team. I could be wrong about that. I mean, they did, but maybe others did too. And partly that was just there aren't as many people. You would have just a very small team, but also it was kind of a political thing. They really those people wanted to get away from this sort of elitist East Coast Marlboro idea, this, somebody, Tony, saying, you're good enough to come, you're not. And at that point, I don't think Marlboro Ale invited mixed teams. I'm not sure when they started, so
right.
I don't exactly know when that date was. But at first, they did not ever. It's pretty recent that we've done that. We didn't make that's like another story, but we didn't make an actual decision. I could tell you about that later.
Okay.
But anyway, so there's a different feeling out in the Midwest. It's not as, the Marlboro Ale seems more, Met Gala, red carpet compared to the Midwest Ale, which is just more, hey, everybody, let's get together and dance. I think Marlboro's relaxed a lot in the last 50 years, but...
Do you think that has to do with regional characters?
I think so, yeah. This is a generalization, and others, Dan might have a very different view, or other people who've done both. I think it's not that the teams out in the Midwest didn't care about dancing well, but they cared more about being social. So they weren't as critical of themselves or of other people. Critical in the sense of critiquing, as a dancer on Oak Apple, I thought we were doing great if all our hankies went up at the same time. And then I came here and, it was very, these are the 3 dances you might do out this year if we decide you're good enough to do them.
And that's Marlboro Morris and Sword, correct?
Yeah. I'm not talking about the ale now. I'm
right.
talking about
the
team. Yeah. And that team has also relaxed quite a bit.
That's a really different perspective. She is smiling with a suppressed kind of laugh.
It's just my perspective, my experience.
Of course. Did you take on any administrative roles when you were in Madison on the team?
Yeah, the last year or so. I actually came here and talked about it. Tony had a conference, a Morris Dance conference. I think he was going to make it an annual thing, but it didn't really take off. Various people came and, talked about whatever they wanted to. And I came and talked about Oak Apple and its sort of its history, basically. But Dan and I were the squire and foreman the last year or so. I can't remember exactly. Dan probably knows exactly. I think I was squire and he was foreman. And basically that happened because nobody else wanted to do them. And we said, if you ask us to do this, we will say yes, but we really want to look good. So we're going to practice having all our hankies go together and, that kind of thing. And everybody said, oh yes, we will. But then they got sort of annoyed that we wanted to spend so much time being so picky about stuff like that. So it was a little frustrating. But our idea of that kind of thing and theirs were clearly not the same. That happens.
Yeah. Oh. And they did not want to do it.
They wanted to jump up and down for a while and then go out for ice cream, which is totally wonderful. Totally wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not sure exactly when you moved. Oh, we established it was
93.
around 1993.
Yep.
You moved to, where'd you end up? In Boston?
Nope. Western Mass, Buckland.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And so you came now as confirmed Morris dancers. Probably you started doing English dancing while you were in Madison. So I'm imagining you were looking for your new community. And how did that happen?
Let's see. The summer before we moved, I saw Andy at Pine Woods, and I said, "Oh, we're thinking of moving out, and I would love to dance on Marlboro." And she said, "Well, if we're taking new dancers, we'll invite you to our open." And it was like not the of course I was expecting, and I thought, "Oh, okay." And then in the year in between, Meg Ryan emailed me and wrote or whatever and said, "Oh, you're moving out here. Do you want to dance on Guiding Star?" And I said, "Yeah," because at that point, well, for one thing, just anything was fun, but also I had this idea that I wouldn't be able to dance with Marlboro. And Dan started dancing with the men right away, and there's enough overlap with all those people that pretty soon we knew where all the English and contra and Scottish stuff was.
Yeah. So how did it evolve that you ended up at that point? I think it was fairly soon after you came here that you became involved in the administration of Marlboro.
And the end of that other story is that I did get invited to join Marlboro. Not sure what happened because no one had seen me dance at that point, but they changed their minds. Anyway, so I started dancing with them in the fall of 93. And so 1994 was my first ale at Marlboro. And it was the last year that the women did it by themselves. They had already been clear. I think it was the 20th. No, was it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this was all decided, before I at that point I was just like showing up to dance or, work on whatever ale thing they wanted me to work on. I think I did T-shirts and registration with Dinah the first year. So the idea was that 94 was the last one they were going to do alone. The next year, 95, they had someone from the men's team shadow them. So each woman had a man from the other team shadow them through the year. Not me, because I still didn't really know. I think I worked with Dinah again, and somebody shadowed the two of us or something. That was 95. And the next year, 96, was the women backed off. And I could be wrong about this, but I think that the women weren't saying, and you should form a committee. They were just saying, here, do what you want. And the men decided that they would make this committee rather than it being the whole team. Like, not all the men on that team were also on the committee. Honestly, I don't know. I don't think the women said, "Oh, you should be on the committee," so we still have a little, hand in it. Dan was going to be on it. I don't know. It just seemed... I can't remember, but someone suggested it, and I said, fine, sure. I'm sorry, I can't remember what I did an hour ago. Let alone 30 years ago.
So true.
Mary Sargent has said that I was at one point squire of that early committee, and I have no memory of that at all, but I trust her. If she says it's probably true, but I don't remember really.
Well, I think what Dan told us is he was the first squire, and then when he stepped down, you stepped in next.
That does sound right. That sounds right.
I think you were next after him.
And I stayed on the committee, and not that long, though, because after I bought my bookstore, I felt like there was too much. Maybe I did it a few years beyond that. At some point, I felt like I was doing too much. Again, I don't really remember.
You had bought the bookstore in Shelburne Falls,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and you were running a business by yourself.
I had a little help, but yeah, I mean, I had a few people.
And kids.
And I think maybe by then I was teaching at Mohawk, too. Oh, and running a community theater group.
and running a community theater group.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm sure my voice is going down too much.
Nope.
Yeah, I moved it for a little closer.
And you're
so
repeating some of the things I'm saying.
Yes. So it's so interesting to hear
the same story from different people.
Well,
well, I'm just saying we all have different experiences and perspectives.
We talked to Dan, and
who has an excellent memory,
who had a lot of details in his accounts, and you have just told us that you were absolutely like running a business. You have children, you're teaching and running a community theater, and you were on the administrative committee, and you're just like, yeah, maybe I was doing too much. And it's like
and it might have been one of those things where you say, okay, I have to give up something, what can I, and that was really the only thing on the list.
Yeah. But it also is saying to me something about the nature of you, where you would be happy to take on these roles in life where you run things.
Leadership.
That's sort of what happened when I became squire here, or this time around, or whatever. Because I guess it was after the 2018 AO. I had been back on the committee for a couple of years or so, but I wasn't a squire. And Mog was the squire. And we always have a debriefing on Monday after everything's cleaned up. And she said, I'm done. I'm overwhelmed. I'm stressed out. I can't do this anymore. And we were talking about it, and she said something about, I'm happy here at the Ale. I like schmoozing with people and being, but all that organizing and stuff in the background is driving me nuts. And I said, really? I like that better because I'm shy. Like, it's hard for me to schmooze and stuff at the Ale, but, I'm good at, like, setting stuff up in the background. And Sarah Pilzer said, I nominate you to be the squire. And I said, well, does anybody else, like, I didn't say, okay, I wanted to make sure nobody else wanted to do blah, 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 but that was how it worked out. And it's true, I am happier doing the background quiet stuff.
How long has that been since you were nominated and stepped up?
2018, spring of 2018. What is this? So only 5 years. Wow. Well, the pandemic, is that right? That's right.
Yeah.
The pandemic makes everything seem longer.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been the squire for 5 years this time, and when you were on the Ale before, you were doing other...
I guess so. I mean, the only thing I really remember is being in charge of t-shirts. Getting the design, going down to the t-shirt plate, ordering them and stuff, right? I did that for several years.
Yeah.
I mean, I must have done other things. But I just don't remember. It's just too far back.
So you've told us a little bit about current challenges in running the Ale. Do you want to go into, like, do you get feedback? Like, do you have surveys after the Ale? Like, people say, I like this, I didn't like that. Nothing like that? Like, how do you think of and make changes?
Until this year, it was all informal. People would say stuff to us at the Ale. I think when I took over, I would send an email to the squires after the Ale saying, please let us know any feedback. They can give it to you or send it directly to me. This year, Natty made a survey, which we sent out to people after the Ale. I guess you guys probably didn't get one. Well, I don't know, because you're not on a team, but you were guests of the committee, so. But anyway, I think maybe I just sent them to the squires, and so you didn't get one, but I could send you the link if you want. I'm sure, as you know, from other things you've done, it's a double-edged sword, because you want to hear what people have to say, but then everyone saying different things and complaining, and then if you don't do what people said, it gets hairy and stuff like that. So we had a little bit of that.
I remember Dan talking about the buses and how that, and many people, as we've talked to them about the ale, have mentioned the innovation of the buses as being a social advantage as well as a logistical advantage. And have other things like that happened where you might have been solving a logistical problem, but it ended having other consequences, positive or negative?
The only other thing there was the buses, which, by the way, everybody missed and said they missed. We didn't have them this year or last year, but we're gonna try. We want them back. We're gonna try again for this year, for that exact reason. It's much more social. You actually have to leave the campus a little earlier than when you're driving in your cars because the buses are slower.
All right.
But I guess people don't mind that. The only other thing that I can remember we did pretty early on was we switched the feast from Saturday night to Sunday night. What it was before, we would dance in Brattleboro on Saturday and then come back to the college for the feast. And then on Sunday we would dance around Windham County, and then people would be on their own for dinner, either going to Brattleboro, some other town, or coming back to the field and having a potluck. And it just seemed like we're in Brattleboro, we can just come back to the college or eat in Brattleboro, and then the next night we can have the buses bring people back from Newfane to the college to the feast. And when the first couple of years we did that, were the best, I think, because we decorated the dining hall. We got champagne and oysters. We were the waiters. The committee, we waited on people. Like, we were at the door with trays of drinks for people. It was really fun. It was really lovely. We dropped the oysters at some point. I don't know if they just got expensive or not enough people liked them, but it was more of the ambiance than the specific food. But I think that did make it seemed logistically a better idea to us, and I honestly don't know why they didn't do it the other way before. But things do seem to flow better with that switch.
Dan also said he was very aware of sort of a reaction from some people of these newcomers coming in, and
newcomers being the committee members, or people who had just moved to the area.
Yeah, and running all of a sudden running the ale, and
too bad they could have done it. Sorry.
No,
exactly.
I love it.
I mean, if you're going to complain about something like that, you should be, unless you're unable for some reason, you should be willing to be part of the solution.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Alrighty. I agree. Could I look at your?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Because my it keeps on going black.
Oh no,
the
that's
screen
fine.
goes black.
I was going to say something earlier about the financial stuff, which sort of ties in a little bit to people, complaining or wanting certain things or not wanting other things. I don't know. Is this a reasonable time to say something about that? So the cost of the ale was $180 in 2019, and in 2022. We had the 2 years of no live ales. We charged the same price. We decided up front we aren't going to make a change. We don't know what stuff is going to be like. We're just going to charge the same amount. And we lost a lot of money, thousands and thousands of dollars. Rhett would be able to tell you exactly. So last year, and we didn't have buses. We did have some alcohol, but not sort of free-flowing as had been in the past. It was a little more regimented. And then this past year, for the 2023 ale, we raised the price to $230. And we also didn't have buses, and we also had minimal alcohol. In fact, we had no alcohol. I sent the Squires an email like a week before the ale saying, we're not providing any alcohol. And then like 2 days before the ale, we got something together for Friday night, which hopefully we'll be able to do for Friday and Saturday this year, maybe even Sunday after the feast. But anyway, we got a fair number of comments about the rise in price coupled with the loss of certain amenities like the buses. Everything costs more. I mean, that's the, everything's the answer's a little different depending on what aspect of the ale you're looking at. But, our rent went up, food costs more, all of that stuff. Sarah, I think, we talked about this beforehand, and I'm glad she did it. She had made a big pie chart that she showed people on Friday night just to give people an idea. It's not like we're making any money on this. In fact, we're still losing money. Maybe we didn't lose quite as much this year. But most of it goes to food. That's the main thing. But I don't think if we said to people, the ale's only going to cost $100, but you have to bring your own peanut butter and jelly and bread, I don't think people would go for that.
Expectations from the past.
Yeah.
And also being taken care of very well in the past.
Yeah. And every year some people say, well, do I have to pay the full price? I'm not staying on the campus. I have dietary needs. I'm going to eat my own food, blah, blah, blah. And we've decided it's just doing it a la carte like that is just too complicated. So we basically say no every time. Every once in a while we make a quiet little exception for some really, really good reason, but basically you just pay or don't come.
Yeah.
And that, I can see how that would make people think twice, but stuff costs more.
So in terms of positive comments, so you had 2 virtual ales, and then you've had 2 in-person ales. Are people happy to come back?
Delighted, ecstatic, yeah. We got I didn't hear any negative comments for 2022. Everybody was just so happy to be back live and seeing all their once-a-year friends, and, even with no pubs and no buses and stuff, pub stops on Saturday, that being separate from alcohol at the college. The pub stop on Saturday is kind of like the buses, it's this really nice social thing, and we didn't do it at all. We didn't even say, okay, we're going to meet outside at the gazebo and have, sodas or something. But people were just really, really happy to come back. And this year too, this year we tried that job thing, so a lot of the feedback was about that.
So people had to do a job at the ale.
Yeah. Do you want to hear?
How did that work from your administrative perspective first?
It was hell.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I forget when I had the idea. I don't know. Chris and Sarah and I talked about it pretty early on last year, and I did not realize just how difficult it was going to be to figure out exactly what jobs we needed and exactly how many people for each job, and then to, when people registered, we asked them, when are you arriving, when are you leaving, is there anything you prefer, and we asked questions about stuff to try and help fit people into slots, but it was, I'd set everything up and then say, oh wait, this person can't do that job because X, so then I'd have to move everything. It took so much more effort than I thought it would, but we liked it. We feel it was a good idea, and I will tell you why we did it in a moment. Except for one person, all of the feedback I got, either informally at the ale or formally through the survey, said this is a great idea. Not all of the jobs went smoothly, That's to be expected. But everybody said they thought it was a great idea, except that one person. But statistically speaking, not relevant.
Why did they think it was a great idea?
Yeah, so why we did it was, I'm going to answer the question, but I have to say this other thing first. What we had been doing for years, we had hired students from Marlboro College to do stuff like clean the bathrooms when we were out. That's the main thing, is cleaning the bathrooms. So we hired people to clean the bathrooms, and we did everything else. Then suddenly no more students. Even in 2019, when the college was still there, I could not get anybody to be interested in doing that work. So we, and I guess we had done this a little bit before, but we did more. We offered half scholarships to people in exchange for work. And I think, if 50 people a year asked for that, we'd probably still be doing it that way. But only like 15 or 20 would ask. And so that was a lot of work for a small number of people. So that was one reason we decided to do it. If we just give everyone one tiny little job that can be done in 10 or 15 minutes, boom. And we also separated the money question. So if we said, just let us know if you need money. And this year we just gave people the half scholarship if they asked for it. I'm not sure how we're going to deal with that for next year. In a couple of weeks, we're going to have our get together, and Rhett will give us our financial report, and then we'll know how that went. But the point is, that's why we did it. And then we said to ourselves, if everyone has to do a job, they might be better about cleaning up after themselves. So the jobs themselves won't be as difficult. And that, in fact, is what happened. And also people said that they liked the sort of social community bit that it built a little bit. Some of the jobs were done by, alone, but many of them were done with 2 or 3 other people. So we got feedback that people like that too.
It's fascinating.
I kind of hope, I hope that would happen when I was putting, these 5 people are going to clean the dining hall on Saturday night, after the Kaylee, and they were from 3 or 4 different teams. I thought, that might be nice for those people. Maybe they wouldn't know each other, and now they get to. Could go both ways, but. Did I answer the question?
Yeah,
I think I did.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm just looking at the questions here, and I do want to hear about the decision to invite mixed teams.
Or the non-decision.
Or the non-decision, or the evolution of thinking.
Right. When I first started coming to the Marlboro Ale, as far as I can remember, we were also inviting other. So we had men's Cotswold, women's Cotswold, and other. So Guiding Star was an other. That's a mixed team, right? Orion Sword was an other, also mixed team. Half Moon's not, but they're other. Anyway. So
other was non-Cotswold.
Non-Cotswold, yep. Right? And for other, we didn't say anything about gender. We're inviting Guiding Star because they are something different to look at, right? And there were always. Okay, wait, I gotta sidestep one thing. First of all, I maintain, and no one agrees with me, if I would say that Bowery is a mixed team because they have a female musician. And when I first said that to Jessica Murrow, she said, no, it's a men's team. And I said, you don't think you're a member of the team? And she said, yes, I'm the musician. I said, then it's a mixed team. If the musician is part of the team and the musician is a different gender, then so nobody agrees with me on this. But and then there are teams like Thames, which has had women dancing on it for quite a long time, and we invite them almost every year. So it was clear there wasn't really there was like an unspoken rule, but there are also clearly things that didn't fit. And then I don't know. might have been for 2019. There's more of a conversation happening now all over the dance world, of course, about gender and its irrelevance. And we talked about that in our meeting, the one where we decide what teams to invite, and whether it was a good idea or not. And Rhett pointed out that, like, we tried doing it that way. We tried, we would have columns, men's, women's, other, and we tried to just have Cotswold and other. And Rhett pointed out that we were basically still split about evenly in men's and women's teams. That was the whole purpose, I think, of splitting it, was so you had a fairly even number of the two genders. Well, now, there's more than two genders, and most teams are going genderless. Marlboro Morris and Sword has. So that's kind of why it was a non-decision. It's more just acknowledging that the world is changing, and to talk about men's and women's teams is not really appropriate anymore, relevant.
Awesome. Everything has to change, right? What other, in the evolution of the administration of the ale, are there other things that have changed because of the world changing?
The pandemic, for sure.
Like things have gone online, so that changed a lot of your tasks.
Yeah. Yes, and we were kind of late with that. Maybe even when I joined the committee again in 2016, we might not have been doing it online at that point. When I first started going to the ale, registration, we call it registration, but it's really like checking in. You've already registered, right? But the squire for each team would come up and get a envelope with all the programs and the buttons and stuff. And then it was their job to hand them out to everybody. Now we do it individually. And I'm not really sure why, except I'm guessing squires said, I can't find people. They wouldn't get their stuff till the next morning, and they didn't know where they were, what room they had, if they had a dorm and all that stuff. It's a lot more work for us to have it be individual. But Natty is in charge of that stuff now, the registration, and before he did it, Peter Kruskal was. And I feel like Peter kind of spearheaded the getting registration online. Like, my memory of us talking about the process, he wasn't saying, oh, we did it online this way, but that's not the best way, I want to do it this other way. I feel like he was creating it, which would have made 2017 or 2018 or something like that, the first online registration one. Like most technological things, it has advantages and drawbacks. I'm pretty sure this year Sarah's taking that over, and I think she's going to set it up so people pay when they register online. So
that seems a good evolution, because
it's the way everyone else
it's the way everyone else does it now. Yeah. And people are used to it now. If you were to stay the same and the world has changed.
Right. No.
But that's impressive for an all-volunteer organization.
Yeah.
It's different than a company with paid employees whose job it is to be the tech person for it. You're fortunate to have the right
We have some
talent base in the committee
talents.
to be able to do that.
Yeah. And this happened, with all the volunteers for camp. Now that's online. Thank goodness. Yeah.
I'm actually trying to see if I can work again. I just started a part-time job, and I think it's going to be fine. But I was a little terrified the first day to discover that like everything happens on your phone, and we had to put like 3 different apps on our phone, one for schedules, one for communication, one for paying, paste our own timesheets. I'm like, I know I'll be able to figure it out, but I don't want to. I'm not a fan of technology for technology's sake. I'm a fan of it when it helps things go better.
Right. Right.
So,
I really love the question we have about your future goals for the ale. I don't know if you like it, but I'm interested. I mean, administrators are so different from participants in that you have to have a really big picture held in your head all the time.
When I took over as squire, my main big picture was talking to Susan after the Pride Parade about this idea I had about a better presence on the internet of photos and stories and things. I felt like, people were going to get old and die, and we wouldn't know the stories, and we wouldn't see the pictures, and they should be kept somewhere and saved. I did not know anything about what you guys were doing. I only knew that Susan was finishing school or had finished as an archivist, so that she might have some good ideas.
I think that was your first question to me is, you've gone to archive school, right? I think is how it started.
It stuck in my mind because I remember it was library science, but then I didn't realize that archiving was a subset or a path that you could choose there. So it kind of stuck in my mind.
Yeah.
And we're referring obliquely to the fact that Rachel, sitting here right now, was the impetus for creating the archive
Of the Marlboro
Morris
Ale.
If I have to,
Yes.
if there's only one thing that I would like to be credited and known for, that's it.
This was your brainchild.
That's-
Yes, you got it in motion.
Yeah.
And at first, before I saw you, that was like June, so it was be after that year's ale. But, I was saying to everybody on the committee, we should have more of a presence on the internet. Like, Peter, can you make us, he was our tech guy. And I wrote to Andy and Julie and asked them to give me a story. And I took it and sort of mushed it together into a little essay that I thought I would put up on the website. And
Which we have in the archive, yes.
I sent it around to everybody saying, what do you think? And nobody answered. That somewhere is where I put, like, what's challenging about being a squire is getting
Okay,
people
you
to
can answer that.
Yeah, to respond to your emails.
Yeah.
What's challenging about being the squire?
Yeah. Getting people to, when we meet, it's good. Everybody's assuming they all make it to the meeting. Everyone's present. They have good ideas. We solve problems. We respect each other. It's great. We all have our different perspectives. Rhett, particularly, I love his presence on the committee. He always has a really insightful thing to say. But they're as a group, they're very bad about responding to emails. I've tried to set up like a calendar, fill out this whole calendar for the next 6 months of any dates you're not available, and we'll set meetings around that. And people either don't do it, or when then you set the meeting, they say, oh, I forgot, I did make a plan. It's just... we are looking for 2 or 3 more committee members. And one reason for that is so that we won't need as many for a quorum. Yeah. And a lot of times, I'll send an email out like a week before our next meeting saying, reminding you there's a meeting next week. And most people at that point say, oh shit, I think I was going to do something. I was going to do something, right? And then they get on it. But they've had weeks to do it, and we have lives. Like, I'm not saying they're bad people. They're great people. It's just a little frustrating sometimes.
I kind of been out of sight, out of mind.
Totally relate.
Well, and I say to people, the reason I'm doing this is I don't want us to be completely stressed out by mid-April because so much hasn't been done. If we arrange for the buses or get the t-shirt artist in September or October, we don't have to scramble for it in March or April. And everybody says, you're right.
You're like a magician.
I mean, I'm not, everyone has the best motives. Like, I'm not trying to diss anybody. It's just people have lives and they forget.
Yeah. How unusual you are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that never happens in any other group I know about.
Yeah. Did we finish talking about future goals? I mean, do you have sort of a big picture vision?
Well, the one that we just talked about, the archiving project. And then I had this idea. It was before the pandemic, so any information I would have gathered, which was not much, would be pretty useless now. But I thought we should essentially make a manual of how to put the ale on. Because if it's like when Mog suddenly said, I can't do this anymore, usually people give like a year's, they say, this is my last year. And I would have been able to work with her for a year, and that didn't happen. So, I mean, she said, I'll answer any questions I can. But I thought if we just had this is what the squire does, this is what the food person does, this is what the bus person does, then anybody could, not that things wouldn't change, but you'd have a basic idea. And connected to that, sort of part of it would be to kind of what I was saying a few minutes ago, having a picture of the whole year and say, okay, this has to happen here, but for this to happen, this other thing has to happen, so that has to happen by here, and that,
timeline.
So a timeline. And I asked people to give me information about what they do and what sticks in their mind as the big crunch times or timelines, or I now know this thing really has to happen before this other thing happens. I didn't get that yet, but I'm going to bring it up at the next meeting.
You should have 5-hour meetings and do everything that needs to be done.
I have proposed that too.
Oh.
It would be fine.
Yeah.
We could have like a retreat, a weekend, and do everything. But it's a big chunk out of people's lives. People don't really want to do that. And I actually should say Chris Bracken has written down pretty much what she's done for food the last 2 years. So one person has responded. But
you do write down here, herding cats.
yes. Yeah, that's kind of what it's like. Actually, I want to say one other thing, because I just mentioned Chris. Last year, we actually decided to try co-squiring, because, as you know, my life had kind of fallen apart, and I was really feeling unsure if I was going to be able to do all the squiring stuff. Sarah was the co-squire with me last year, and we kind of broke stuff up so that I still did all that background internal stuff, and she was more the public face of the ale. And that was fine. And then this year, we've shifted things around again a little bit. Sarah took on a slightly different job, the money stuff, because Retz wants to be done with that. So Chris has taken on that co-squire part. But it's the same idea, basically.
How much longer do you think you'll be squire?
I don't have any plans to leave anytime soon. Chris and I were talking about this. We met by ourselves a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about new committee members who might be good for the committee. And I said, well, probably want to get more young people, because, Rhett and Aaron are taking one foot out the door. Mary's sitting on the fence. I'm perfectly happy to keep going, but I'm not a young person anymore. I have to keep reminding myself of that. So I said, so we want to get some young, energetic people. And Chris said, yes, but she said, I really like the intergenerational aspect. And she said, I don't want those older people to just disappear and now we don't know anything. And I thought about that. She's right. It would be better to have people who are, have energy and are committed no matter what age they are. And how did that fit into the challenges, maybe? What am I answering?
And goals.
Goals for the future. Yeah, okay. So the manual, and then having enough good energy continue. And I'm not really sure. Basically, when someone says they're finished being on the committee, then we look around for someone else. Like, we don't do anything. We don't look down the road. And maybe that's just the nature of it. I'm not sure I mean, it's not like we're going to audition people for it and then, call you when your name comes up.
If someone steps forward, you just say, awesome.
Depends on the person.
Oh. Gotcha.
There are a small number of people who we might love dearly but would not want on the committee, even though we know that they would be delighted to be on the committee.
Right. It's not always...
Just because of the way they work.
It's not always the best
It's
job.
not always the best, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't, yeah.
For example.
That's, yeah. We could talk about that later if you turn the microphone off.
We don't have
We don't,
to.
I'm just saying, that's an example of someone who would love to be on the committee, but nobody would agree to that.
Yeah. What are your...
Not the only person, though.
Yeah. So, the difference between being a dancer and an administrator, it seems like you came to Brattleboro, or you came to the Valley area, and you immediately became part of the...
I joined two ritual teams right away.
Yeah, on teams and now organizing. As you mentioned, not because you just want to take over, but because, who else?
Someone has to do it.
Someone has to do it. I'm willing to do it. Fine. And then there must have been a number of years in there where you came as a dancer, right? And then you mentioned 2016 about when you started working on the committee again. So what are your different memories, different feelings about those two roles that you've played?
Well, if you just come as a dancer, right, you don't necessarily have the big picture of how the whole thing is put together. I think, even if you're just on the committee, you have a better idea. But certainly I learned a lot more after I became squire about what other people were doing on the committee. I had my own little thing, but now I have to learn what everyone else is doing too. Maybe it's just the kind of person I am. Maybe others wouldn't have this problem, but I find it difficult to be a committee member and a dancer at the same time. I wouldn't say I have a great time at the Ale, but I don't have a great time as a dancer at the Ale.
If you're also on the committee?
Yeah, me.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
Because I'm always just I can't really just relax into it. I mean, there's moments where I say to myself, okay, now I don't have to do anything more for a bunch of hours. I can completely relax into that. But, we get to the end of Newfane and I'm like, okay, people, hurry up. I have to clean up and make sure all the grass is clean and get all the lost and found stuff and throw the trash away. And come on, you're taking too long. One year, I told the last bus to wait for me, but they didn't get the message. And as I was crossing the field, I see the last bus pulling out. I'm like, they did stop for me, but, and I'm dragging lost and found and trash around with me. So that part is you can't just relax and be a dancer for that.
Yeah. Our experience of, running and co-running, both of us, July 4th, and your mind is in one place and everybody's mind is someplace else.
And you're sort of there for a few moments, but you're always going back to that. You made that face when I said that about the bus, but one year, I don't know if Dan told you about this, but he got left behind at the college because he was in charge of getting everyone on the buses. And he turned around and the bus of his tour was, off down the road. So, he drove to that year. He just drove. And I think, he got someone to ride in the car with him after that. But
yeah.
It's
crazy.
Yeah. But I don't mean to say I don't have a good time. I do.
Well, you must be proud.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, and people, no matter what happens, people still have a great time. I've never heard, this might have happened and I just don't know about it, but in all of the years I've been coming to the Ale, I've never heard about anyone who said, this was awful, I'm never coming back.
Do you have favorite like high time memories?
You asked that. I don't really. It's more the sort of gestalt of the thing, except the processional on Saturday morning. If I'm in it, it's like the biggest high in the world. And of course, Marlboro were always the first team line, so it's like you're right out there leading this giant group down the hill. And years when I haven't been able to dance and I'm at the bottom watching the processional come down, that's almost as good. So.
A number of people have mentioned that first processional as just a high point for them.
It just, we haven't gotten to all the show dances where we're focused on the one team. It's not late where everyone's tired. It's, it's like, why are we here? Mm-hmm. This, there's the drum. That drum starts and yeah.
Whose idea was the processional? Do you know? It just always was.
Yeah. So don't forget, Marlboro Morris and Sword began the AO, and for our May Day, we start at the college, at that parking lot by the music shed. And in old days, when everyone was younger, we would process all the way to Andy's house, stopping several places along the way to dance in a set. Now the processional has some walking in it. We do a different processional for that than the one that comes down the hill at the college. So there is some walking. But still, there's some dancing and you're going uphill a lot of that. And you're stopping at people's houses to dance for a while. So I think I'm assuming, Tony and John just said this is how people get on. We're going to do this processional. And that.
When things evolve like that, you don't really know how it's going to land with people. You might think it's like I said earlier, an administrative change really has a social impact that you may or may not have anticipated. And to hear so many people in these interviews talking about the processional as being the highlight is so...
Yeah. All of them are good, but the one at the college is particularly wonderful.
What do you mean all of them are good?
Well, we do a processional at Elliott Street and at Newfane too. We start all of the show's dance with a processional on. In the other places, it's to let everybody know, hey, we're here, we're going to start now.
Yeah, it's the start of a show.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. The one on Saturday morning is like it's
just something about it.
It's the celebration. It's not an announcement to anybody but ourselves.
Right. And it's the beginning.
Yeah.
We're all, we've all got more energy than we're going to have for the whole rest of the week.
Right.
You're still dancing?
Yes. I've had problems the last couple of years, but
on Marlboro.
I plan, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say, Rachel? Do you have any other questions? Have we missed anything on our list?
I don't know.
Favorite memories, significant goals. Here, you look at your list.
I put down, when you said about changes, when I started coming, we had workshops on Sunday mornings.
Oh, right.
Of various kinds,
right.
Some sort of dance thing or, a workshop on fooling or something like that. And they got dropped off somewhere along the way, mostly because not enough people were coming. Most people wanted to sleep in. But the last year or so, a couple of people have been asking about that. So we're going to try it again this year with just one workshop to see if it's, if it interests people.
What are people interested in learning?
Well, that's the thing. We were talking about that. It has to be something, no one's going to come to like a field town workshop or something. Like it's got to be something people don't know how to do or don't know very much about but look interesting. So I think we haven't gotten as far yet, but I'm guessing we're going to ask one of the younger, newer dancers who does something sort of unusual if they would like to teach something. I could be completely wrong about that. I honestly don't know what we're going to pick, but we were clear that if we tried it again, it had to be something we thought people would actually go to.
And at a time when people would be awake.
Correct.
Ish.
Yeah, I mean, if you're, got the whole weekend, you've done a lot of stuff, if there's anything you're going to cut out, it's going to be this optional thing on Sunday morning.
We were interested to hear that there had been workshops, and we didn't really know that.
Yeah.
At one point, someone talked about the workshops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't even remember exactly. I mean, I assume they were mostly Cotswold workshops. They might have been something sort of specific, like dancing to the music.
But the Midwest Ale, as I recollect in 2019, when the first online ale, and 2020, and they had so many workshops that they were presenting at just normal.
Yeah, we sort of collaborated that first virtual year, and we had sort of crossover. You could join different groups and stuff, and it became clear to us that they have a lot more group energy, like organizers and dancers. Like they just do a lot more of that stuff. I mean, we were pretty surprised to see how much stuff they were doing, and that it was pretty normal for them.
How does that make you feel about Marlboro?
I had mixed feelings. There was a part of me that said, oh, gee, like, what's the matter with us? We can't do stuff like that. But then it's just, and again, my last Midwest Ale was 1993. They just have different gestalts, they're different. I'm sure that would be true if we went around to all the different ales in this country or around the world. They'd all be a little different.
And what words would you use to describe Marlboro?
I think I feel, and probably a lot of others, it's the first one. It's the grandma ale. It's the there's a word for it in psychology. It's escaping me now, but the sort of ale, which doesn't make it the best. It just means it has more of a history. It has more sort of weight and depth than ones that haven't been around as long. I mean, as you know, we're coming up on number 50. That's kind of a long time. Although the Midwest ales, but other ales have been around. It's not like 40 years went by and then other people started doing them.
No, it was, like the root. It's the root.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, because other people have based theirs on Marlboro. They might have gone in a different direction, but that's the template they're using.
Right.
Maybe that's what I mean. Not really a template, because that makes it seem like it's sort of empty, waiting to all the things to be filled in.
I think that's a good place to end.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Thank you, Rachel.